So, yeah, maybe I'll start by just kind of describing my sense, like just to kind of summarize my sense of what your project
Mm-hmm.
is and what you do, kind of by way of introducing you to people who maybe not don't know your work. I
Mm-hmm.
think probably some will, some won't, but I'll just
Mm-hmm.
tell you and ask if you think it's right. So I mean, okay, in the broadest scheme. So you're engaged in Marxism and feminism, uh, and you have approach that is, it's from a post-structuralist angle, or at least starting with that. But then
Mm-hmm.
it's very critical of post-structuralism on its own terms.
Yeah.
Um, so obviously you're in speculative realism territory. Like you talk to those people a lot.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but you're a lot more engaged with post-structuralism than uh, you know, like Graham Harman or something like that.
Mm-hmm.
And you seem to kind of use like gender theory as a bridge between Marxism and feminism. And you obviously like Laruelle is kind of your big person that
Mm-hmm.
you sort of always, I
Mm-hmm.
was sort of scanning some of your essays that I hadn't read, and like you
Mm-hmm.
introduce his work, and like pretty much every, there's that little section on, okay, here's what non-philosophy is. Um, and he wrote the forward to one of your books. And so you have this kind of Laruellian, it's like Laruellian gender theory, basically. Um, oh,
I don't think there is such gender
it,
theory.
yes, of course, yeah, yeah. I mean, it's the
Laruellian route through gender theory, maybe,
yes,
but
staging an encounter between the work of Laruelle
because to
and
Laruelle, gender is not even a thing.
right,
No.
exactly.
Yeah.
Um, and but you also kind of you like I saw in one thing you made the point that a lot of feminists in the post-structuralist realm have anticipated, um, maybe even influence the move towards speculative realism too.
Mm-hmm.
And so there's, I mean, in more recent work, I think you talk about Donna Haraway a lot also.
Mm-hmm.
Um, so yeah, I mean, um, I,
Even in the early works, I talk about Donna Haraway a lot.
okay.
Even in my PhD,
Okay, yeah, I didn't know that.
98. Yeah.
But so you also have, just to kind of finish that, like, so you also have like, gender theory is really just one part of what you do, right? So you sort of have a whole system, you sort of engage
Mhm.
with capitalism, philosophy, and sort of the commodity fetish has something to
Mhm.
do with, the perhaps alienated sense of the woman that can kind of be
Mhm.
mistaken for the feminine,
Mhm.
and like your um uh it like I would maybe it seems to me like with your gender theory stuff, it's like you're very hesitant to ground feminism in the organic body, and also hesitant to ground it in the because that would be reactionary, and then you're
Mhm.
hesitant to ground it in the sort of social idea of gender because that's liberal basically, right? And so
Mhm.
so so you're like, oh, sorry, hold on.
Mhm. It's okay.
Um, so you are, you're sort of seeking this like extra radical, sort of Marxist feminism that it's all about approaching the real, sort of finally like
Mhm.
approaching the real in thought and not just reifying the real or constructing a theory of the real. And do you want so just any thoughts about that summary to start? Can you see me? Hear me?
Yeah, I was just trying to connect to my mobile to a hotspot because it seems like my network went down. Is it okay now?
Yeah, it's okay now.
Uh,
I think that
I
might have
think it's the system. It always restarts, the telecom always restarts around this time. And then it's usually normal. So I hope it will be stable.
okay. Yeah, that might have actually been me getting a call also. I sort of have I'm doing this on an iPad for the first time and it's connected to my cell
Ah,
phone and
okay.
so I got a call. So that might have been what
Possibly.
yeah.
I'm reading here not connected, but now I realize that it means not connected to Bluetooth. So,
Okay. Yeah.
okay, so all is good. Yeah,
Anyway,
and
I
network
I can
is
see
good.
you and hear you just fine.
Yeah. Okay, so yeah, where were you?
Oh yeah. So like so just is that I know I just kind of like threw a bunch of stuff at you, but
Mm,
just kind of to, kind of orient people. Like so
mm,
is anything seem wrong about that? Like you want to just start by like uh did that seem fairly adequate as a
uh,
like a very loose summary?
Fairly adequate, but it also needs elucidation because it
Of
explains
course.
different stages in my thought. And what you said about post-structuralism is probably not valid nowadays, but it was valid and it was the case when I published Cut of the Real. Then I wouldn't say I really identify or that I've ever identified with speculative realism. I was somehow identified with it by others, including publishers, who basically made me make a connection in the introduction to the speculative turn because I was there, perhaps the only feminist or the person talking about gender who had something to do with speculative realism. At least this connection with Laruelle and I don't know what else seemed or created the impression that I was part of it. So it was sort of a compromise that I make some sort of a link or reference to it. Uh, because something there, something that happened there was relevant indeed for my work. The relevance of the real, uh, the excavation of the question of the real after decades of its being completely buried under the ground of post-structuralist postmodernist discourse. There is nothing to say of the real. There is no language of the real. We cannot account for the real. The real is impossible. So this was the situation created by the emergence of the post-structuralist episteme, and this became sort of a norm. And perhaps, we were in our early 30s then, all of us, the speculative realists, the Gen X, which was 30 in the 30s
Uh-huh.
then, and we wanted to provoke perhaps the dominant narrative because post-structuralism kind of became the dominant narrative at that point. When we graduated or just around or just after our graduation. So there was something there uh, there was something there to provoke, to poke on and see if and see how this discourse reacts to these provocations, because there was as if a prohibition to speak of this, like the real, the one. These are the topics of Cut of the Real. I wouldn't say that Cut of the Real is so much a feminist philosophy or a feminist project. It is more of an homage to feminism, to feminist philosophy, trying to prove that through feminist philosophy we can open several epistemological major questions, like the impossibility to speak of the real, then the prohibition to speak of the one, the like almost ethical condemnation, of speaking of rendering assigning any relevance to or value to the notion, the idea, or the possible reality of stability. So stability is a bad thing. We speak of constant transformation. This is the discourse that is allowed. If you say something that is different, like, it's a fact that occasionally there are situations of stability, but we sometimes we are methodologically, epistemically put in a situation to have to produce an account of an instance of reality or purported real or a certain one, speaking singularity. So I felt a frustration from the almost scholastic, like medieval scholastic prohibition to speak of certain things. And, like this conflation between morality, ethics, what's good, what's bad morally and politically in that sense, and epistemological possibilities. So this was frustrating to me. On the other hand, you're right. I did want to keep something, or I did cherish at that point, and even to this point, something that post-structuralism has taught us about, especially about subjectivization and identity production. So I wanted to retain that, but also demonstrate that it has a conceptual kernel or epistemological potential, even metaphysical. And I never use the metaphysical in the negative sense. I use philosophy in the negative sense. To me, metaphysics is what drives everything, including science. So I would rather do metaphysics than philosophy. So so there is something there that is of value, but the way that it was read, it was like reproduced through secondary literature, through academic commentaries, seemed completely wrong to me. For example, Foucault in his beginnings and in the earlier reception of Foucault's work, even of Butler's work, Judith Butler, they were accused of being too deterministic. Like, the subject is a product of discourse, so you're just an effect of something that is macro and that is beyond the control of you as a subject or as an individual. And this was condemned during the 90s as a sort of a determinism, and one had to find ways to defend this thesis and to demonstrate its plausibility. And at that point, in the early 2000s, we were already in a situation when, the constructivist concept was taken obviously as some sort of a fiat thing, like, precisely as you said, as a sort of a liberal individual choice that, produces a reality, and that's it. So this element of almost a determinism, which isn't truly a determinism in Foucault, this thing was lost. and to this determinism, that there is an element of realism, I would say, and this is what I was defending. And I took the route of Laruelle. Laruelle helped me clean Lacan of certain philosophical layers in order to extract and demonstrate this aspect of realism, the realist points in Foucault especially, and to a certain extent in Butler as well, because the constraints of discourse and its force of conditionality does work as the real in Lacanian sense. So in that, and I would say that to this day, I subscribe to this. So I don't think that there is anything wrong with the major authorities of post-structuralism. With the original thesis, I think that there is fundamental misreading by the wider academic reception of this theories and thesis, which
Right.
is
Yeah.
too simplistic.
Yeah, and it seems like so much of that has to do with talking about like the decentering of the subject, but that decentering still kind of presupposing the subject or being tied to this kind of rationalist masculine, where or kind of having too much, trying to, thinking you already know what the real is in advance and presupposing it sort of in a philosophy system. Whereas like, yeah, I think that's probably not the way Lacan. I mean, people read Lacan philosophically, but like he's a psychoanalyst, and that a lot of his work is kind of misread, and that
I
maybe
agree.
and
I
that
agree.
Laruelle has maybe done a better job in sort of talking about what the real really is in Lacan, and
Sorry to interrupt, but Laruelle has his own reading of Lacan. He actually values Lacan's work. He provides through his so-called non-analysis. It's laid out in theories of strangers, and I don't know what other work, I can't remember. The Ethics of the Stranger. So early 90s. He's kind of trying to radicalize Lacan, reading his thought from philosophical layers, or layers that are not necessarily his, produced by Lacan himself and in his own teachings, but more by the reception of Lacan. So even Laruelle himself uh, operates through Lacan in a certain period of his work, of his philosophical or non-philosophical development. And so he takes this Lacanian route and seeks to radicalize it by adding this non in front of it. Yeah, okay, continue. I just wanted to clarify that Laruelle does have his own debt to Lacan as well.
yeah, yeah, for sure. Um, yeah. So I mean, okay. So I want to end up, I want to at a certain point in this talk sort of ask you. I mean, I think but my big interests are the connection between philosophy and the arts, as well as between philosophy and religion, and mysticism, and kind of Laruelle's connections to Neoplatonism and this kind of thing. But like, I wanted to actually look kind of closely at some ideas at specifically your essay. It's called against embodiment, right?
Yeah.
Maybe that was published just last year, or it was like kind of a
Mhm.
rewriting of an earlier thing. So I'd love to get kind of concrete with what we're talking about here, basically, right?
Okay.
And so I really enjoyed the I guess the theory of, you use the word the self, though I don't think you quite use it as a technical term, but like, it's sort of we're talking about that around which political praxis can be oriented. It's connected in some way to Laruelle's future Christ stranger type of thing. But you sort of meticulously construct it okay, so it's like on the one hand we've got capitalism and philosophy, and that's sort of uh rationalist, um somehow sort of maybe capitalism has hijacked philosophy in a way, right? And then there is the commodity fetish, um which is tied to the fetishized woman, basically. So it's like that
The woman as a fetish always already. Yeah.
yes, as sort of that which is exchanged among men, uh and then also it's kind of like as an object of desire or something like that, right? And so that is and that one can imagine. So anyway, but so that that the imaginary there is actually a sort of a fantasized replacement for the real, which is missing. And that
Yeah.
and that like in maybe a more naive approach to all this, the real doesn't even enter in the theory at all. Like that a more naive theory actually um places a kind of suture on the real by fantasizing about it as the feminine, as the multiple or whatever. But that is already, that's still exploited somehow, and that there is the real which enters enters the situation through, it can't be accessed, it can't be understood in advance, all this kind of thing, but it enters through trauma, basically.
Yeah.
And you talk about Lacan's touche and automaton, and then something you you repeat in this essay is that it's that the machine is not on the side of philosophy and the rational. The machine is on the side of the real, um, and that like it's there with the organic body, and so
No.
okay,
I'll
so tell me
explain.
more.
Okay.
Okay,
Then I'll
so
continue and then I'll explain that.
no, well, I mean that was
That's it.
yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
Let me just turn on the light because it's getting dark here.
Okay. I mean, I guess just to finish the question, and so is it then there's like, there's this litany of like people saying that something isn't the human, so it's like, okay, it's not the transhuman, it's not the post-human, and then Donna Haraway has the inhuman, which is a term you kind of endorse, and then you sort of endorse Laruelle's term, the non-human, um, and you're uh yeah, I don't know. I mean, this is just kind of an interesting like theory of the soul you have here or whatever, and I think I'm curious, like um well, before I ask more, what's wrong about me saying that the machine is on the side of the real?
Uh, because the machine, or you mean the automaton, right?
No, I don't mean the automaton. I mean the automaton is of course on the side of structure, but
Signification, yeah.
technology. So that like technology, like I was sort of reading you, I guess, as saying that like because like techne as craft is prior to philosophy, that that
Yeah.
means that like in terms of the cyborg, that like technological development is that there's no limit on it or something like that, and that you can't fetishize the organic body as the real or something like that.
Okay. Something there sounds correct, but I don't know if we're making the same point. Okay, the previous was a misunderstanding because I thought that you were speaking about the automaton, which is essentially a signifying automaton, right?
Right.
So either value exchange as in capital, like monetary value, or exchange of another type of value, which is again assigned to something real, but the automaton of signification acts as if independent from the real, and the physical, which are not the same thing. So the automaton of patriarchy and the symbolic order, that is, it's a language that keeps exchanging value for value, masculinity for masculinity via the currency of femininity, etc. So these things operate as if spectral realities, as if what language is to us as bodies, and as bodies detached from any of these values assigned to us, or we yeah, they are assigned to us, even if we individually choose them. We still choose from the repertoire of the symbolic order, of the repertoire of the imaginary order, of the repertoire, from the repertoire of language. So value, signification, meaning, shape, aesthetics, etc., whatever is assigned to us as body is already a mediation of our bodily reality via signification. So via that automaton, it's already transposed and becomes something else. So a detached, alienated reality from that of the real, which is of the real scene without language, if we can imagine something like that. So physicality is something like that. Physicality, be it bodily reality or some other physicality, it could be an artificial object like this notebook or whatever, without it.
You mean like like the real in this case is really like the real of like, it seems like it's like the real of the present situation, right? Like the actual current contradictions in society or something like that. So
The
similar to
real which
the
precedes language, the real which
yes. So
precedes language. But to me, this is what I wanted to say. It's a postulate, because the real is always mediated through language. You cannot access it, you cannot experience it, you cannot face it without language and without its fetishization in a way. It's unavoidable. What Marx criticizes in in capitalist fetishization is something that ultimately comes down to reification, for mistaking the abstract and even camouflaging the abstract, packaging the abstract and value, be it monetary value, be it another moral value, whatever, it can be a religious value, into something physical, as if that physical is supposed to be the only form of the
right.
real.
Yes. Yes.
So this is the fallacy, this is the lie of capitalism. And I think that this type of logic, this type of almost invisible fallacy permeates Western philosophy as well. without ever being truly acknowledged. You really have to look at it from a Laruellian, from Marxian perspective to really see this, why and how damaging it is.
One kind of basic question I wanted to ask you is like, do you see just Western modern philosophy as doing that, or like, are there like for example, like say so like Laruelle draws from Neoplatonism, like that does is that due to the specific like hijacking of philosophy by capitalism, like sort of after the scientific revolution, or is that a tendency that has been in Western philosophy since Plato?
Since Parmenides, I would say. Parmenides, since always.
So there was another text, Violence, that I read that I really liked a lot, and you sort of you talk about the so there's the stranger. So the stranger is kind of the one who is confronted with the real and is sort of always you know always estranged from any kind of social determination, but is sort of forced to communicate, forced to represent themselves within that, and kind of it's the and that's kind of the passion of the future Christ, right? It's sort of the passion of um having on the one hand a relationship to the real, and on the other hand a relationship to um any foundational category or concept. And uh and you talk about the stranger in terms of like Spinoza's conatus, or right? So and like I was very, I want to ask more about the Neoplatonism stuff, but also just like, can you talk more about the like how serious you are in referring to Spinoza, and like to what degree, like for you, what is the distinction, or is there a distinction between political praxis and aesthetic experience, and sort of just the desire to live a good life, the desire to kind of have um the desire to just kind of be human, like what tell me more about your sense of how yeah, this stranger, sort of the aspect of the subject that is connected to the real, in terms of sort of yeah.
Okay, so a stranger is a concept, a category that Laruelle operates with when he discusses subjectivization, when he enters the realm of psychoanalytic discussion, because he wants to radicalize the discourse, and in doing so, he wants to find now we have the subject, right, in Lacan. Let's take that through an example. It would be easier for me to explain. In Lacan, you have a subject. The subject is the effect of language, right, of the symbolic order. It's merely an effect, and that is correct. Laruelle would agree with that, but behind, and this is mainly the reception of Lacan. I would say that Lacan does seek to create discourse of and around the real. He does think that the real is relevant and one can speak of it in spite of it being something that always already evades language or precedes language, or both at the same time. So it seems like this popular Lacanian, especially post-structuralists, so mixed up with other late 60s, early 70s French theories and their reception in the Anglophone academic world. So this just this mixture of it all, also operates with Lacan at its center. And there, it seems like the concept of a subject is the only one that is relevant, the only one we can speak of. We speak but of subjectivization, and the relation of the subject to the real, which is also inside of him. Laruelle would say the human in human. This human is a mute human. This human is without language, and that human in human sits inside of us. We all know that, and this aspect of ourselves would be called the radical stranger, as he calls him. So I operated with that category, borrowed from him, and it is a kind of an intermediary category and intermediary terrain, which where one can speak of the operations of the real, of our subjective, vast linguistic relation to ourselves as the real, and but it is a territory somewhere between a language and the real. This is at least how I take the category from him and how I operate with it. And now about Spinoza and how serious I am, or I was back then. I don't know, I think that's a different thing. Elsewhere now, at a pretty is the connection still good?
You cut out for a second, but now it's fine.
Okay.
So yeah, you were talking about Spinoza and it.
Yeah.
So you're saying that the Spinoza stuff is more a past era for you,
Yeah,
and
it was an old idea, an old project, an old approach, which I do not denounce. It's just that I'm doing something else, and nowadays, and I think that this goal can be accomplished through Marxism far easier than what I attempted there. So you were perhaps correct in your introduction when you said that in a greater part of my career, maybe I was still somehow inside of post-structuralism or working from within it, because I opposed this prohibition. Again, prohibition, it's almost a moral prohibition, to be honest. It was like that in the early 2000s among the post-structuralist feminist luminaries. One was not allowed to say, I'm a universalist. You're immediately, labeled as reactionary, as totalitarian. Which universal? Of course, you mean the Western white universal, etc., etc. So I still remember it was 2004, and it was somewhere here in the region. There was this huge European conference on feminist studies. Rosie Braidotti was presiding, and it was, like universalism, this, it was like assumed that we're all anti-universalists. And at some point, Alenka Zhupančič says, I'm a universalist. And it sounded like a scandal in that room. And I was like, okay, yeah, I get the sentiment. I see why she needs to declare this position, but we still need to work out through these challenges or these questions that post-structuralism poses to us. How do we make sure that when we are universalists, when we aspire to assume some position that could be universally understood, could be universally communicated, could find some frequency where it could be universally shared. How do we make sure that we are not totalitarian, we are not imposing our worldview, etc., etc., etc.? So I took recourse to Spinoza because he helped me place a certain ethical value which seemed fairly safe from any cultural or civilizational or political economic imposition or totalitarianism, because it placed the value of ethics and care of the other, and therefore of sociality, of being a social being in that sense, and responsibility toward the other in the identification with the suffering of the body, any body, human body, animal body, whatever body, be a suffering of the body. And where does Spinoza help here? Conatus is defined by simply some intrinsic, almost physical as in physics in that sense, tendency of the life to increase its presence and thus oppose pain. So opposing pain inflicted upon others or oneself is a life increasing capacity, life increasing tendency, life increasing activity. So conatus is simply this embeddedness of a certain law within nature that it seeks to increase its presence. Life seeks to increase the presence of life instead of death, of course. So also oppose pain, and this enables identification and solidarity with those who suffer pain, because even the imaginary, even the idea of the other suffering is an idea of decreased life. So it's already a sentiment that is life decreasing within you. So via this route, I was trying to propose a certain concept of a universal that would also be a political category, but still not oppose the laws of post-structuralism.
So it seems like, so do you mean that it's sort of like, it's not that you are, it's not that you're thinking of this kind of expansion of life as like a metaphysical force in like a Bergsonian way. It's more as a lens of mutual recognition.
Yes, and it's what I was thinking back then. It was just one of the methods that helped me prove the point that Judith Butler's insistence that the increasing of the realm of legibility, right, of discourse, life as discourse, universe as discourse, world as discourse. So inscribing ever more and more languages, ever more and more experiences that are legible, like rendering. She gives the back then they were she insisted on the examples of Palestinian lives and inscribed into this language that just expands, where white losses and deaths are already legible. So we're just expanding this realm and making Palestinian death legible. To me, that was totalitarian. whose realm is this? Who is expanding the realm? Who is letting the others be legible? This legibility of this alien experience is already translated into a certain language. So I saw problem with that, and I saw problem with the fact that some experiences are also worthy of mourning, of grief, and these are experiences of beings that cannot ever enter language and participate in this language production and render themselves legible. And so instead of that, I made the suffering body the universal, political universal that can be shared across cultures without any culture's domination in that process. So that was an experiment then, and it maybe proves that, you know, it was necessary to keep searching for roots, to think in terms of the universal. But nowadays, I would say that the Marxist approach already provides a terrain that is relatively comfortable without oneself justifying one's thinking, one's method, and one's politics too much in front of the post-structuralists, in fear of being maybe misunderstood as totalitarian or Western centric or whatever. And when I say Western, I mean also Eastern Europe, because in terms of history of idea, we're West too. I mean, it's the same, except that the West has occupied the term.
Yeah. So I mean, and like, what do you mean by Marxism in terms of political praxis when you say that? Like, do you, I guess, like in the current scenario, do you see, like, radical leftist political praxis is not making very much progress right now? Like, do you see the aesthetic? Like, what do you think about how does this relate? How does this play out in kind of our current scenario, right? Where like, more and more of society is being carried out online. You know, uh, you know, do you see the like the art world or the entertainment industry or just the mimetic sphere, like on like
Mhm.
online social media as a place where interventions can be staged on
Mhm.
behalf of the stranger or sort of as a stranger, or is all of that um is all of that kind of hopeless sort of because it's kind of inscribed in advance by capitalism, and then like, so then where is it, like what's the status of academia, that
Mhm.
kind of thing.
I don't think that the left, the contemporary left, wherever it is, what West or East, whatever defines itself as the left and is legible, let's use Butler's shortcut, and is legible to the West as the left. I don't think that the left is Marxist or socialist, any of it. Even when they say they are, it's it seems like it's just an discursive accessory that renders the persona of the politician or the public figure or whatever more radical, seemingly radical, more seemingly committed to social justice, etc. Um, and it does not go beyond that. I don't see Marx seriously discussed or utilized in conversation. I don't see Marx read in his original text and his original writings discussed without the discussion of the later interpreters, and in particular the worst, the post-Marxists, which are to me anti-Marxist completely.
Okay.
McIntyre and the others, that's completely anti-Marxism. I don't know why do they even call themselves Marxists. So I don't see Marxism anywhere, and I don't see proper socialism anywhere in these spheres that you're mentioning, be it in arts, being in social media, be it in what presents itself as the radical left nowadays.
So, I mean,
Because, sorry.
you can keep going, sorry.
I don't think it's there, because I don't think, as I said, I don't see them subscribe to Marxist ideas. I don't see them subscribe to, the main tenets, principles of this thought. There is, first of all, the culturalization of politics, rendering the cultural everything that is political. Then this post-structuralist Laruelle move style particularism in the so-called left populism is again radically moving away from Marx. It's still this rejection of the postmodernist rejection of grand narratives, of universalism, of speaking in universal categories. Why? And why is this prevent? Why? It's because there is a certain fear to go back into the grand narrative that Marxism is, a fear of its, I don't know, possible hegemonic position or imposition in relation to other discourses. It is a systemic approach. It speaks in broad strokes. So maybe this fear of, abandoning the modesty of post-structuralism, let's speak in small narratives, let's speak from personal individual level, let's not be collectivist because that may lead us to totalitarianism. No, not really. We have learned lessons from the failed versions of implementation of Marxism and socialist ideas. We can return to the original texts. We can return to Marx himself, his own writings, and we can at least start envisaging. We do not have to, declare a socialist republic and the dictatorships of the proletariat right away, but we are allowed to think in those terms once again. And
So,
just to make this point, because it may remain unaddressed, and I did mention it. I said that Marxism provides a terrain for universalism without cultural imposition of any sorts. The point is that we have seen Marxism embraced already by many cultures. Many cultures, many societies. It has been a global phenomenon, and it has its own cultural civilizational appropriations, and it still has a language and a set of categories that can be easily exchanged and understood on any corner of the planet by those who embrace Marxist discourse. So this is the point I wanted to make.
Yeah, so what do you think about like sort of the post-left, like neo-reactionary right in terms of like this kind of appropriation of ideas from Marx, with kind of like, objective accelerationism and this kind of thing, like that's a view that definitely has more teeth. It's certainly it's made more waves in its
Mhm.
critique of liberalism. And like, if one is wanting to critique liberalism, maybe erode liberalism, like attack it, that you know, there's been power there, culturally. And the issue, of course, is that that line of thinking tends to end up getting astroturfed by
Mhm.
authoritarians and sort of, the tech oligarchy people, which is, more and more happening, where it can almost, because this is something that I'm kind of unsure about myself. Is that like there, do you see that as a vital space at all, at least as something that can kind of hystericize the left into doing better or something like that? Or do you see it as just a full-on kind of false flag operation, that's just in control of authoritarians?
Oh, this is a very difficult question. I don't see the left reacting in the way you suggested, which would be a favorable way, one that I would support. You know, understanding that, the discourse that is supposed to be theirs is appropriated and made use of politically and gains even by the right. So it's obvious that the right is reading Marx more
Hmm.
than the left, which is um, a strange phenomenon. I don't know how to interpret it. Uh, but I don't think that the right is socialist, or I don't think that the right speaks to the working man. I think that the right will act in a typically right-wing populist manner. If we're talking about America, it will be like, Erdogan's populism in Turkey, which did help the working man, it did increase the GDP, etc. Turkey is far, far better off since Erdogan. Or take Russia, or take Orban in Hungary. So I think it will be like that, and the appeal to the working man, the working class, is a the just the populist discourse. So this working class is simply the people, the regular people. So I think that the discourse will continue to sound like that. I think that the political practice will be like that, but they are also adding, in this last version of the Republican Party in particular, they're also adding one layer, which is a lesson learned from Marx, apparently, where they're like opposing, in a way, or juxtaposing maybe, and opposing, because they're also making a choice between the real economy and financial economy, speculative, specular, detached from use value. You say, like, the automaton of making just money, producing just value, the automaton of capital from the third volume of Marxist Capital. Like, that's the stock exchange, and the self-sufficient universe of stock exchange, as Marx says. So this new right opposes that and embraces real industry, real production. So it seems that there are some lessons learned there that will be used, certainly not for political, for socialist purposes, of course, and they will be employed in a populist manner, again, to serve a certain authoritarian clique, I would say. But they were faster, they were more clever in identifying the potential in Marx that the left sadly could not identify. So it's just, a sad fact. That's all. It's not nothing to, hope for.
Yeah.
But I agree with you that there is
Well,
this appropriation.
yeah. Well, and also I feel like trauma as well, like that there's some kind of aesthetic, there's this sort of like aesthetic trauma of like reactionary ideas that gets a lot of attention somehow.
Mhm.
And uh so do you think that, but so then like what is to be done with Marxist theory right now? Like is it kind of like, is it a matter of just trying to read Marx as well as possible, sort of within a kind of para-academic sphere, sort of, and then sort of like wait until things collapse, or like what kind of praxis, like, and because I mean, you talk about universalism,
Mhm.
um,
I think it's more about reading. It's more, as you said, it's more about um, allowing or making possible uh, the presence of proper Marxism in academia, uh, uh, gradually taking the place of what is nowadays, so I don't know, some sort of individualistic leftist progressivism. Uh, Reading Marx in a rigorous way, uh, allowing for this discussions without treating them as fringe positions, without treating them as dangerous not positions, but without treating the fact that these discussions are held as sort of a social danger. So allowing for more Marxist discussion, for more penetration of Marxism into academic discourse, uh, and thus enabling a certain class of people. So these are intellectuals, right? Artists, academics, etc., to be able to read the political situation in a certain way that would lead gradually to what one would call a raising of class consciousness. That's the old term, Marx's own term, or something akin to it, so that we see a change in discourse. This is the only thing we can do, I think, and we should do, because I believe that things need to reach the, as Marx would say, final contradiction. And it is the contradiction precisely between the speculative, self-serving, self-sufficient automaton of value making, value production, and the reality of production, of resources, of labor, etc. When this contradiction reaches a position whereby this illusion of capitalist universe becomes untenable, and our positions within it untenable, then we can maybe start imagining a more concrete, or not a more concrete, but more concrete political options. So this is just a horizon, I would say. And one needs to reach a certain point at the development of capitalism to start imagining different political scenarios that are specific, that are concrete, and that are aligned with the socialist idea.
interesting. And what role do you see technology playing? I mean, is like is like like especially as it's been uh yeah, I mean it's been an interesting couple of years.
Mhm. Yeah.
um but I mean, like, do you generally say, like, do you view I get the sense that overall you would say something like that, you know um technological development tends to be on the side of sort of of disaster, basically. That it's um uh that this kind of rationalist uh rationalist hope on the side of sort of abstraction ends up not being uh rational from the perspective of the real. But there's also a lot of emancipatory potential in uh like talk a bit about like the hybrid.
Mhm. No, I don't. I actually oppose the idea that technology is rationalism and it's purely rational and it's detached from the physical and the real.
Right, yeah, yeah.
Actually,
I mean, this is what we were talking about before. Like, yeah, I was trying to say you see the machine
mhm.
as being on the side of the real, but so in terms of the rational being, I think a hope for like total administration or something like that. But then technology, yeah. Anyway,
Um, first of all, have a problem with the term rationalism, etc. I think that it's a nativistic term, that it is a mystification from, like centuries ago, from the era of rationalism, in an era of cognitive sciences, to fetishize the notion of reason and rationalism, which is just one of the mental cognitive capacities that we humans, as part of the animal kingdom, have, is to me a little bit naive. So I actually, the radical diet that you mentioned is all about us always already being technical. We're always
right,
already being technical from within our animality. So there is no opposition between technology and animality or physicality or material reality. In the book you have in mind, I presume, I'm opposing the naivete of putting reason on the side of technology, equating and conflating reason and technology as the same thing, even though technology is such a mechanistic material phenomenon. It's astounding. So putting it there and fetishizing reason or spirit, the Hegelian spirit, as opposed to the mere matter, uh, is a that is precisely, maybe on metaphysical level, the final contradiction of capitalism. That is unsustainable. We will exhaust all resources. Okay, never mind, ethics, never mind the suffering. Let's be just, purely, I don't know, rational in this discussion. We will exhaust resources. First, minerals, right? For example, you have this idea of batteries, green transition, etc., and it all relies. We still don't have substitute for, for batteries that are based on, actual minerals. So these have we have how many 40 years to dig them out. What after that? Or if everything becomes, all labor becomes pure technology, what will happen with all of us, human and non-human animals? Uh, we have no other position than to become resource. So what does this self-sufficient universe of value, capital, and money and wealth serve to and for, if there is no agency to trade. So it all becomes nonsensical at some point, and it's the idea about universal basic income. To me, it's such a naive solution of a band-aid for something that is huge hemorrhage and a far bigger problem that cannot be patched up with a band-aid like universal basic income. It's even funny that it's seen as some sort of a final answer, leftist answer from an accelerationist position to the accelerationist premises, because universal basic income has existed in former socialist countries. It's not, a new phenomenon. It has existed in Africa for a while. I mean, it's not the solution of this contradiction we're talking about. Why would a human agency that is nowadays reduced simply to a worker, waged labor, when deprived from their position of being waged labor, why would they hold any agency? Why would they be citizens? Who needs citizens now? So these things, homo faber and the citizens and the citizen and citizenship and a nation state as a republic, etc., etc., all of this is intertwined with this development or this projection of a development where we have a self-sufficient value production automaton of capital, which does not need human labor to produce value. What is left out there? So this is the contradiction, one of the contradictions, or the contradiction put in metaphysical terms that I'm talking about.
So it's like it has to be a society of producers, an association of producers owning the means of production, because people need to be necessary, basically.
Yeah.
Yeah. So you keep saying metaphysical. Like, what do you want to talk more about? Like, what you mean by metaphysical in this context? Maybe that's a way to segue also into the relationship of Laruelle and ancient philosophy.
I don't know if Francois would agree with this or if he ever agreed, even though he wrote a very generous endorsement to that book, socialist towards socialist metaphysics. I published it with Punctum Books in 2015, and also Ray Brassier endorsed it. But there, I actually started developing this argument that, so it kind of even goes a bit against, to a degree, against what Laruelle says, or not quite. Let's see. My argument there is, even though there I depart from Marx and Marx's problem with philosophy, and Marx's insistence that this new science of humanity, or the species being of humanity he talks about, must exit philosophy, must situate itself outside philosophy or on the remnants of philosophy and create a new form of thought. This was comparable to Laruelle, and I saw it kind of executed in practice, because the type of thought that Marx produces is indeed some sort of a new science, a new model of thinking. It's no longer philosophy, even though we can see that it has issued from philosophy. So building on that, building on Laruelle, my realization was that indeed what we need to depart from in order to have a more rational, as they would say, mode of thinking in continental philosophy, in social sciences, in humanities, etc., is maybe not the route of doing away with metaphysics and the remnants of metaphysics, but with philosophy and with its problem of principle of self-sufficiency, etc. If I go into that direction now, it will the conversation will take a different route, and I would have to explain Laruelle, so I won't go there. And I'll just simply say that in the process of this realization, and which came about through reading Marx via Laruelle and vice versa, there was also a very simple realization of what is going on in Marx, at least. Let's leave Laruelle aside. Marx does deal with metaphysical questions, like what is the essence of humanity, what is the essence of the species being of humanities, what constitutes social relations, what is matter, why is materialism more or the right route for his thought and for emancipatory thinking rather than idealism. Or how do we constitute ourselves as subjects? How come we're always already alienated to a necessary degree? Because this real abstraction must exist. The subject language. Okay, I'm using Laruelle here and Lacan now, not Marx, of course, but in a way he says this as well. This subject, this self, in every human must, in a way, be alienated from this material foundation we all have. But the error of capitalism, he says, is the fetishization of this alienation, the reification of alienation, of the reality of alienation, of the necessity instance of alienation, and without instead of admitting it, actually filling it up, painting it with different colors to make it go away, to hide the lie of this fundamental alienation. So thereby we produce a second level of alienation, which is this complete lie of the pseudo-material reality that capitalism is. I think that Western rational thought, in particular philosophy, operates in a very similar way. On the other hand, what we are moved by, both in arts and sciences and philosophy, is answering these simple metaphysical questions like, what is the real? What is my relation to the real? How do I overcome this constitutive alienation within me? Or how do I grapple with it? Or I don't know, what is the nature of the outside reality? How many universes are there? Asks physics, for example. So science, arts, philosophy, they're all moved by metaphysical questions. There is every scientific question is, in the last instance, a metaphysical question. So that's why I embrace more metaphysics, or rather metaphysics, than philosophy.
Interesting. Yeah. So you mentioned let me see okay, I guess I have sort of two questions in mind at the same time. So one is take Plotinus, right? So say we put aside this whole world of Marxist theory, post-structuralist theory, speculative, all this sort of stuff, right? That one way that people read Plotinus, who is an influence on Laruelle through the idea of the one that that is a mystical reading, right? That there's actually a practice there's a mystical practice that involves that is beyond thought, and it's ultimately an ascesis that sort of like, causes you over years of doing this to sort of attain a state of consciousness that is free at a deeply existential level, right? Um, and uh, and in addition, so kind of separate point, but then there's also the idea of the transcendentals, right? Of sort of truth, goodness, beauty, and justice. And uh, like when you talk to followers of Badiou, like, people in this Marxist post-structuralist realm want to say that there aren't that's all those types of norms are inherently oppressive or something like that. But then like Badiou has the truth procedures, which are art, science, love, and politics,
Mhm.
which relate back to the transcendentals. Like, what? So, first of all, I guess, do you? Um, and I kind of lean towards like say someone like David Bentley Hart or Ed Feser or someone like that. There's people who sort of are modern thinkers who insist that they make a case for a kind of Thomism or an Aristotelianism on
Mhm.
those topics. But I mean, Ed Feser is very, very conservative. Like, these people tend to not then um, also be able to incorporate into their theoretical work a concept of um, you know, social contradictions, and that they're not really seeing
Mhm.
society for what it is from a Marxist perspective. And like, what do you see as like? Do you think there's anything to this kind of just sort of um, ancient practice of philosophy that
Mhm.
really is about a sort of uh, internal development through mystical contemplation? And do you believe that the transcendentals are real? Like, are truth, goodness, and beauty sort of, are those like fundamental partitions of human practice,
Mhm.
or are they just um are like, or is there just kind of an infinity of different practices, and you can't really circumscribe any of them from the position of the stranger?
Mm. Okay. I would say we all always already inhabit a transcendental universe. As I said, I grant relevance to the real, I grant relevance to the material, uh, but we can access them, we can account of for them, we can mobilize them again only via language. And it's not just language, there is also this necessary gesture of alienation that we spoke about. So everything is brought onto the plane of the transcendental. So of course it all happens there. Good beauty. Well, what was the sorry?
Truth,
Truth,
goodness, beauty,
truth.
and and
Kalokagathia.
justice, or oneness. Yeah.
Yeah, Kalokagathia was the in Plato. Plotinus, I used to, when I uh, did my doctoral research in France at the Sorbonne, I used to translate Plotinus a lot from Greek to French. I was really good. But
Okay.
as a philologist, no, I wasn't into the text so much back then. So Plotinus, oh, Plato, it's still the same thing, more or less, like Platonism. Um, but you're asking me about something that goes
Like,
beyond.
uh, yeah,
Yeah.
like, like, one could say, like, so one could make the argument that Marxism actually maybe requires like an actual spiritual asceticism or something, right? That there would be that to really be an agent, to
Mm-hmm.
really see the whole and really kind of be able to act in um
Mm-hmm.
in a good way, basically, that it
Mhm.
requires a kind of mysticism and an ascesis. But that wouldn't be a very
Mhm.
popular thing to say. So, like, what are
Um,
your thoughts about that?
um, it certainly does not contradict this practice. Um, I'm not sure it requires it, but the one does not exclude the other. I do not want to equate them because I do not want to produce this image of the Marxist and the socialist as some sort of anti-consumerist, modest example of a decent human being, this moralist image of what a socialist is. Socialism is not about charity, it's not about compassion, it's about restructuring society in a different way. But for a vision and for a commitment to such fundamental change that you believe would benefit all living beings, human and non-human, you do need some type of, I don't know, whether it's mysticism, or I would want to employ some form of
Uh-huh.
mysticism, at least myself. I don't know. Um, I've always been intrigued by it. Um, I've always found something there that mattered to me. I've always been close to or in different periods of my life, to religion, or maybe it's a question of coincidence. It was quite strange that at the time when socialism collapsed, most of my friends who were musicians in post-punk bands, like Laibach style, uh,
Uh-huh.
they were all over ex-Yugoslavia. They suddenly all became, Orthodox priests or monks or whatever. So most of my
Interesting.
friends
Yeah.
are bishops, bishops
Most of your friends are
nowadays. And
bishops. Cool.
one of them is the video I sent you this
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
morning. So I've
He
always
used to
been
he
drawn
used to be
by
in a post
that,
he
all
used to
the
be in a post-punk
drama
band.
there. Uh, Especially when we were radical about it in the 90s, there would be this long all night wakes, we would call them, like prayers all night, and and we would sing, etc. I didn't have the patience to stay until the end because I was never a true believer, but I was always amazed by the drama there, especially one priest. He's a professor of theology now, and he taught everybody now, who became an archbishop or whatever. He was the professor or teacher or whatever, mentor. And Father Stefan is his name. And, when he would hold a ceremony, it was so dramatic, I would even compare it to ancient Greek Eleusinian mysteries, it was like that, and his gestures, etc. So there is something there in the aesthetic that I like, and there is something which is comforting to me. There is something in the figure of Christ which is important to me, as a moral, almost mystical, as you would say, thing, because I have no explanation why it's important to me. Um, I sometimes speak to my friend, the bishop whose video I sent you this morning.
Hmm.
What is it about me that is, like so close to religion, yet so detached? He insists that I should stay the way I am. That my
Maybe.
daughter had more potential to be committed to
No,
religion
yeah.
than me.
No, I'm in the process of converting to Orthodox Christianity.
Mhm,
I've been a catechumen for a year, and I'm going to be received in the Orthodox Church of America next month,
mhm,
actually. And
mhm.
yeah, yeah, that's cool. I didn't know you had so much experience with it. Um
Now I'm frozen or
Oh, can you, how are things now? Can you hear me okay?
yeah, we my internet is unstable again.
Okay, yeah. I don't think you even cut out at all on my end.
Mhm,
Um, but yeah, I mean I'm very attracted to the idea. I mean, I think specifically Orthodox Christianity, because of its focus on beauty and glory, um, which is it's just so much more powerful um, than but like Protestantism is mostly what they
mhm,
have in the United States, and like um, though I think that Protestantism has in the past, I think there was a lot of connection between early social justice work
mhm,
and Protestantism. But yeah, when we were on tour uh in Europe last month, I got to go to some Orthodox churches in like Estonia and
mhm,
Lithuania, and was really kind of amazed by it. Um, but yeah, I was able to look at that video a little bit. So you sent me a video of
mhm,
um a bishop that you were in
mhm,
discussion
mhm,
with a moderator on the topic of
mhm,
the father. So
mhm,
and yeah, and I guess it's an interesting topic to discuss from a Lacanian perspective too. I think people forget that like the idea of the name of the Father, like that term
mhm,
is the end of the Lord's Prayer. It's in the name of the Father.
mhm,
Um, and I didn't quite watch enough of the video to get the point, but like it was sort of it was interrogating the idea of fatherhood. And I guess I was imagining like sort of he was suggesting that like the church ought to be more introspective about like not I think like deconstructing the idea of the father, but then also preserving it in a way or something, or like what was the point of that video?
mhm. Oh, my internet. Maybe I should wait. Let me change the network. And I think I heard almost everything, but I think that this will be a more stable network.
Okay.
Okay. No, I mean, it's a long conversation and it's time consuming to watch all of it. I thought that you would look at the minute or around the minute that I suggested, because there he says the following thing, and I think that, for example, in Western Christianity, this would be, a scandal, and coming from a bishop, or actually archbishop, that's what archiepiscop, as we call them. They have autonomy over the clergy. So coming from him, it would be a huge scandal, and here it's allowed. And he says that Christianity is the biggest scandal in the intellectual history of the West, or Europe, or Europe and its neighborhood, let's put it that way. Uh, but the direct quote is the biggest scandal and provocation in the history of Western ideal. It's the biggest provocation to patriarchy. It's we are speaking of a single mother and her son who provokes the entire order and submits it to her claim that she gave birth to a son of God.
Yeah.
It is essentially fundamentally anti-patriarchal belief, and hence the dialectical tension between Christianity and the Old Testament. So he says that in the Europe House, EU Cultural Center, and in front of the National Philosophical Society and theologians, etc. And everybody's clapping, and that's normal, Nobody's like, oh, what did he just say? Like, this is not very Christian.
And
Um,
that talk was in Macedonia, right? Or where
yeah,
was it?
yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
Um, yeah. Yeah. I mean, I really think I really see a lot of potential for some kind of hybrid between Orthodox Christianity and Marxism. Um,
Mhm,
and what have you looked at all at Russian sociology? Like uh there's a theologian named Bulgakov who was writing in the early part of the 20th century who was he was a Marxist in Russia, but he wasn't a Bolshevik, and they kicked him out, and he became an
mhm.
Orthodox theologian.
Bulgakov, like the author, or like the
Uh,
writer.
n not Mikhail Bulgakov, but Sergei Bulgakov.
Uh-huh, okay.
So it's a different. It's not the Master and Margarita
Mhm,
person.
yeah, yeah.
Um, but he's an Orthodox theologian, uh, and he was a Marxist. He wrote books about like Marxist economics, and then he reconverted to Orthodox Christianity, and he
Mhm,
became obsessed with the divine feminine, and
mhm,
the figure of Sophia, which
mhm,
comes from Gnosticism and was an influence on Jacob Boehme, and like
mhm,
undergirds a lot of German idealism through Schelling and Hegel, without really being mentioned so much. And I guess the idea would be that uh, that Marxism, he doesn't say this specifically, but it kind of is implied in his work that Marxism is a kind of sociology, um, where where the world spirit, uh, the world spirit as sort of um, the human species and its relationship to productive force
mhm,
is the divine feminine. And like in Kabbalah, there's this idea of the Shekinah, which is a
mhm,
kind of another name for Sophia, where like the that the kingdom of heaven on earth ultimately is kind of the Shekinah being born. And so there's
mhm,
this kind of gendered, there's this feminine presence of the divine that has
mhm,
now only in the 20th century entered into Orthodox theology, and it's not really like it's been quite influential, sort of
mhm,
more traditional Orthodox people don't like it,
mhm,
but people talk about it a lot, and I sometimes I wonder whether it's touching on things that Marx said but didn't feel able, like could have said in a more clear way by using religious language, but sort of couldn't use that language because it would sound too
mhm,
much, like because it needed to be in opposition to a way that
mhm,
Christianity was being hijacked in the West.
mhm. I don't know. I mean, I wouldn't know because it's complex. It's your idea, I would say.
Yeah. No,
Yeah,
yeah.
completely yours.
I'm just kind
And
of
you have some clear intuition there, why it should work. I can just say that I'm intrigued, but I have to think about it. I don't know.
yeah. No pressure to have an
Because I know
official.
less than you about Orthodox Christianity, probably, in spite of my friends and the panels with them. I think I know less. I mean, um, as I told you, I'm seduced by certain things like Isihasm,
Yeah.
uh, you know, and when we study, for example, yeah, not for example, when in ex-Yugoslavia, when you study philosophy, you study history of philosophy because that's what Marx said. The philosophy is over, and we study just history of philosophy. So we had to study history of philosophy, and everybody had to study their own region. Like Slovenia studied, I don't know, the medieval period and Catholicism, and okay, they also had a Slavic period there with Cyril and Methodius ideologies themselves as well at the beginning, but everybody had to study their own region. So we had to study in the second year Byzantine philosophy. And so there was a lot of
Cool.
theology and a lot about Isihasm, which I found like very interesting.
Yeah, this is stuff that
So
I've been getting really into in the past couple of years, like Palamas,
yeah, but it's a shame. They
Maximus the
don't let
Confessor.
us into Mount Athos.
I
I was
know.
almost there this summer.
Really?
Yeah,
You tried to. I have a friend who goes there every summer. And he
no,
brought I have an icon from there. He brought one back, but
I went to Uranopolis, so the town right before the border, because with this online program we used to run 4 universities: Arizona State University, my institute from Skopje, which is also a higher education institution, like a university, like the institutes in Ljubljana. So it's a post-Yugoslav thing. Then University of Vienna and Eindhoven, we have established a platform we called SMR, School of Materialist Research. And this is the first year that we decided to run something on site. And we did it in what used to be ancient Stagira, Aristotle's birthplace. The place is now called Olympiada, but it's very near Mount Athos, and it is on Mount Athos, the geographical, the mountain itself. So
oh,
it's
interesting.
already there. You are there,
So,
and
so maybe
50
maybe you could sneak in or
kilometers.
something.
Yeah, 50 kilometers further, like 30-40 minutes by car, you're in Uranopolis, and it's on the border there. And we used to go, all the time this summer. And the invisible border was there.
Right,
Uh, no women allowed.
right. Were you ever tempted to just trespass?
No, no, I don't think that would work.
Yeah.
It would be
Um,
disrespectful, no.
yeah. Yeah, no, it's something I just think about a lot because I think more and more people are being attracted to Orthodox Christianity precisely because of the elements that are so reactionary in it, like well, like that, like only letting men come to its holiest site. But yeah, there is some interesting
Well,
theological
that's
stuff
the
in there
only
that
segregation you see, Mount Athos. So other than that,
well, I
um,
mean women can't be clergy and that kind of thing. And
yeah, but they can be nuns, highly respected.
yes,
Yeah,
but
well, it's
yeah.
universal.
Anyway,
There you have one universal
what I
in
like about
every.
yes, yeah, they're sort of
Yeah.
using Orthodox theology as a kind of cora, a sort of as material to take from.
Mhm.
Um, and then, okay, maybe last question. I know we've talked for a little bit. Like, do you like? I've always kind of wanted non-philosophy to insist on like, what do you think that? I'm not sure quite how to answer this question. Like, I mean, just a personal interest of mine is just the hybrid between art and philosophy, right? So like that
Mhm.
trying to generate philosophical theory and just philosophy brought, thought, generate thought
Mhm.
that is addressed to the real, and then also generate work in a different domain that has that has an attraction in culture for a different
Mhm.
reason, right? Like just because it's beautiful or something like that,
Mhm. Mhm.
or because it's uh in contact with some kind of aesthetic contradiction or pressure point that it's original
Mhm.
or whatever. And then that like non-philosophy and a practice like that could kind of merge together in a way that that would be a way to sidestep the sort of inevitable commodification that afflicts both
Mhm.
art and philosophy when they are pursued separately. Um, like, do you think there's any, I don't know, do you think there's any like something like, how to have some practice, like a practice that's like a total work of art that involves philosophy, um, but it's sort of like it's a new kind of thing or something.
Mhm.
Do you think there's any uh any hope there? Any interest in that?
There is interest in that. It's just that it's not how I practice non-philosophy, which is, I guess, evident by now.
Right.
Uh, and it helps me to become even more rigorous and sterile in the way I think and write. But there is a whole tradition, one could say, or perhaps not really a tradition, it's more of a contemporary reception, particularly in France. And this is how his Laruelle's work is particularly received, practiced, etc. in France, in Paris, among his doctoral students, now PhDs, or not even PhDs, but at some point MA or PhD students. Most of them are practicing non-philosophy in this almost mystical manner, the approach to the real, and the one in almost this Neoplatonic manner. They are all very interested in precisely Orthodox Gnosticism. So Gilles Grillet, for example, he had
Hmm.
an entire period when he was just an Orthodox Gnostic thinker. Uh, when we met around 2004, 5, 6, in that period, that's all he was doing at that point. And others haven't veered perhaps into this direction of orthodoxy, but this approach of, almost Neoplatonic approach to Laruelle is very typical of the French, still subterranean reception of Laruelle. So there is something there, obviously.
But it seems, would you say that maybe that approach is not political enough, or that
I
like,
would say it's not political enough, yes,
yeah,
but there is nothing wrong in that.
maybe there's a way to somehow do that and make it political enough or something,
Yeah,
like it
you don't
seems
have to
it seems like
unify everything.
yeah, because that's the danger with Laruelle, I think, is that it's a little bit like the de-skill phenomenon in punk music and noise, where it's like,
Mhm.
if, like, because Laruelle is kind of encouraging people to not believe not
Not
believe
unify and
not
organize
yeah,
things.
not unify
Yeah,
and not believe that they need to even fully understand philosophy
mhm.
systems, because they're just taking little bits from here and there,
Yeah,
and then that can end up being kind of self-indulgent or something. And
yeah.
I really respect the effort to be really rigorous with it, and I
Mhm.
think you're really pushing into a kind of like radical territory that is, you know difficult to follow, and I don't know, kind of noble. So
Mhm.
um thanks. I mean, maybe we could just stop there. Do anything else you want to?
Yeah, it's been a while now, like 2.5 hours.